Namo Guru Me Namo Buddhaya Namo Dharamaya Namo Sanghaya Namo Guru Me Namo Buddhaya Namo Dharamaya Namo Sanghaya Namo Guru Me Namo Buddhaya Namo Dharma Namo Sanghaya Kain Den Lai Ji Guen Jin Do Gai Ne Rai Gai Shu Sa Bo Je Chun Zin Zin Che Ji Yao Bu De Yin Lo Sang Zhang 是当解宝，你的解所说，你的难搞，是的别的，现在老嘛。天边中高见，大路的边，所有那些人都掉马也给要说。小姐个，绕月落这多，也上那月，也有来些说，他别老面子别。也我却愿难做面做脏，且心多不难是这家。我想也是，却人家所有的，所有那些着，且有那却不看见头面。有那啥把也留我也说，明个节天把人东把，昨夜没的说。你那句话，他的说下，你没的马 定住老也是，却见报别，但住定也。我愿不惧也，来见见报也了，大家三宝，他别也让我，切着老嘛。大宝剑那学归靠了，天天呢，千到了苍白，六界是毛了。三界学界，财我不多。那么大悲是因的相报也，所以就过了。朝阳对面我呀，他们那我说过让那呢，谢的毛多，没有多的毛少。大所见念，三别给我的，天当中，给我老旁边道，天不老切着。罗上长毛也，天边念波，人多世界少，没有没有这位，天人间人是。天没有天别，王国将别呀，天国马了，人在上边的，看见看别。昨天中高阳吧，落叶山长，下雨来说我的，苗也没在为，天也见这也是。天也没也没，王不将别呀，天也不毛也绿，人在上边道，看见看别。昨天中看，落叶山长别，下雨来说我的，没有没在为，天也见也是。天也没见别，我用不将别呀，天也不马了， 若云自上月应道，高云见开别，若念中高。罗耶僧耶扎耶别，沙耶拉耶娑耶瓦耶帝，巴耶帝萨耶别，拉耶玛耶波耶揭，大耶娑揭我。别也没得说有他，高低千别，我有你切所有的，我送土也，我住这多有所。巴音的萨维拉耶玛耶波耶切，大耶娑尼嘎，别耶没的说哟拉，嘎的切。我呢这所有的，所有的的么，我有着这多说，我的萨维拉玛的波耶。大所尼巴，别没得说有了，卡的千别，我呢切常住尼别，阿多。哎呦呦，玛萨曼觉耶咩，谢拉呀巴罗呀杰，玛耶呀玛呀嘎，南无我呀我呀尼。说说让人也些去也话，别说鸟别用了，人呀路呀得呀道。我的我的，我让我的，我让什么个不的所有的要到我的我。I ande, I samay ande, moende, ande, yanda, ande, ande, ande. Pai samai gai ade moen gere dongda ja jo che wang da me de tenpa Dorjee Tenzin Dorjee Let me remind all of ourselves to take a moment and cultivate bodhicitta motivation, seeking complete enlightenment for the benefit of all other sentient beings. And with that kind of at least contrived bodhicitta motivation, we should participate in this discourse. So we are, those of you who have this English translation of the commentary called The Profound Reality of Interdependence, a commentary on the chapter 9, Wisdom Gone Beyond, from the Guide to Bodhisattva Way of Life by Bodhisattva Mahasattva Shantideva. And so we are on page 176. If Kishara goes back, it's 175. And so what we have looked at is how do different schools of thought, if you will, establish self, because there is a self that exists, right? And so we have been looking into the non-Buddhist schools of thought, and there are many, but among them, the prominent ones are Samkhayas, Trangzhenpa, enumerators, and Chedaba, Vaisheshiks, or particularists. And so how do they assert self? And so what is their presentation about the basis and the path that leads to their spiritual goal, or what they call moksha, or liberation, right? So that's what we have looked at, and we are still continuing to discuss that.
There's maybe Pemboda, that Shiba Poda, Sawapo, Devane, Phuntsok Gyeltsen Deva Dang Jaye Mideva Thomas Ye Rigbe Goban Zela Anju Dagba Dang Jaye Mideva Anju Dag Anju So Teda Deva Dang Jaye Mideva Thomas Ye Rigbe Goban Zela Anju Dagba Nuji Sheba Deva Gabo Wodi Shejin Anju Ge Lung Le Shebe Ankurwa Lamdudeva Gozu Soji Gozu Soji se Riba Mambo ne Namje Soli Sumso Yang Kede Da Yemena Lenge Jewa Rigmende Xie Sung Dirta Da 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 Me Dir Da Me Na Lenge Me Deva Zua Bon Sum Lenge Zua Bon Sum Kaja Anju Ge Zua Phuntsok Dir Bipada Deva Dang Sawab Deva Ne Phuntsok Dime Soji Ribe No Zera Anju Dagba Nuji Shiva Por Deva Gaba Wod Shejin Anju Gulung Shiva Ankurwa Ankur Tanu Deva Gozu Soji Rigba Mambo Namje Soji Sung Sos O De Da Kanje Ta Tazo Di Da Karsana Chida Da Rangshi Chiba Isa Di Chidang She Da Rangshi Chiba Kesa Si Mukha She Ta Tata De Tanya De Tenda Linje De Chiba Tanya Ki Da Sa Shiba Chiba Nga Shi Linge Ke Linge Gedi Ki Den Shi O Di Da Di Kesa Shiba Rwa O Di Kaye Ki San Sugi Kaye San Shiba Isa Yancho Ani Kaye San Kasa Di Dagba Si Kaye Ki Meda Shi Yancho Nazo Shi Yancho O Ta Di O Di Ki Gaya Di Di Linje De Shi Da Sa Di Gaya Di Shi Rang Sin Shiba Sa Di Mari
So Gisela read a little bit from the top of page 176, subpoint B2, caption reads, refutation of the Nyaya and Vaisheshiks, right? So last week we talked about, very briefly though, how Nyayas or the logicians and Vaisheshiks or the particularists, they think about the basis of law of karmic action and results, right? So the kind of self we're dealing with here is we are not talking about intrinsic self existing in and of itself, but there are many schools, Buddhist and non-Buddhist schools, who accept that there is a life before and life after, right? So therefore they said the law of karma functions, there has to be a self that's the basis for the law of karmic action and results, So according to, some schools, they say, so that self is actually a material form, isn't it? It is a form. Somebody says that, no, it's not a form, it is a state of mind or cognition, Sheba, right? And somebody say, no, it is a permanent entity, right? Somebody say, no, it's impermanent. So different schools, right, they come up with different assertions because they're all basically saying there's life before and life after, and there has to be a self, that is accountable, so to speak, for law of karmic action results, So we have looked at, what Nyayas and Vaisheshiks, they say about that conventional self, I should say, which is the basis of, law of karma and its results.
onju lumli shebe ka so rigba mambo namje so ri she so yang ke de da ni ye me ne le de jawab mirik de hezo so de da me na da me na le me ve so bon som ko de da le de da pa se me na ko de geji jo se geji le me wa ko ta pa me na da de le sange de ko 계시 가도에 내 레상에다 주니고 카가리도 그렇지. 어쩌다 레상에다 주니고 이제 이거에서 다다 버렸지. 레상에 걸어서 우리 집어 걸어진 거지. 나가서 나와서 집에 딱 봐도 말이죠. 계시 주도 좋으시네. 거사 계시 송사 엔티 레제 초에 정요만 소지 희워라. 제가 디송사 그래서 사마 딩마라 디스가 다 가지. 나 메타바이나 레상디 사세드 메제 코디 메레도리 주산 주빈 거디 다 싸워지려고 그자 어디 태우면도 소디스 와라.
So there are a number of schools who proclaim or assert that conventional self, which is the basis of karma and actions, it has to be permanent, And because they said if it's not a permanent, then we cannot talk about how, that when the results of the karma ripen, right, then who is going to experience that? If self were to be impermanent, right, that creates the karma, then that self, cannot continue because it's impermanent. And so then who is there going to experience the result of the karma? So that person has to be a different one. They said, so we cannot account for the experience of karmic results. So self has to be permanent. So if we can assert a permanent self, then it exists, right? And so that's what many of the schools who end up saying that self has to be permanent, But of course, as Buddhists, we said that self is not permanent; it is impermanent. And so, in many of those schools, right, they have a difficulty. How should I say, establishing or asserting what we call momentary impermanence, disintegration, isn't it? So they're not able to understand or establish that things can continue to exist, although things do undergo momentary changes, And so because of that, they end up asserting a permanent self as basis for and accountable for karmic actions and results. Whereas we Buddhists say that no, self is impermanent, but when think in terms of continuity, it is perpetual, or right, it continues. And so therefore, there is no problem to say that the one who creates the karma and then one who experiences the karma are the same person,
mena lede medebe sebabon soms leye jawatezi lede jawatezi hibagobo tezu hingo jozi hibagobo jozi tumomayiwa tuzunje jozi tumomayi shebawas o der ya lede da mena ene da medaba ene dilin da shashuriz telya hibago jubda ene kaza tumo mai bashe ene kaza de le ranjir ve kaza de da mena lende de nyamsha o dilehe de zen ni hegin sigurta.
So as you can see, it's stated on page 176. So they claim that there has to be permanent self, otherwise, one cannot really, how should I say, establish a relationship between cause and effect. Because something has to exist permanently, otherwise, how can you talk about the causal relationships? And so now our response, or the response to that, is that there is a three-part response to that. So the first one is that it says that you don't have to assert the self to be permanent, right, in order to be able to establish a relationship between cause and effect, right? That's the first thing we're going to deal with. And the second thing is there's a kind of unique presentation, Prasangikas, about what does Shikpa, here translated as disintegration, mean. So according to Prasangika, disintegration is an entity, it's a ngöbo, right? But other schools may not accept that, right? That's that. Then the third point is that Prasangikas have a very unique way of presenting the three times, right? So all those three are part of response to refuting the permanent self asserted here by Nayayas and Vaisheshiks,
Because only deva de gopa de kada because he was also lindy with the so the he was also there that me na de lindy me the bon some is going da ba me na lindy ja take ja there some say she says so this is some so deva bon I said yeah lindy da so que ça de c'est ça bon some léger doit être data ben léger doit être que j'ai gagné de réussir et hiba go go jodu tout mai bas tout ça j'ai jodu jodu tout mai hiba was what did that 시바고버 사야돼 다 텐조면 시바고버 샤고 말봐 시바스는 최거지 그런 원조베 살 로마 타가라 시바샤고 텐다 타가셔고 말봐 다 텐조데 시바스는 텔 뭐로베 샤들 딱베 시바스 시고버시 라마르 딜레데 알시 그 헥스드산 메버레 디 메버레와 디 메버레 인자 오보이고 예수가 당마에도 그 yeah, still the passing no, so this is what
So basically, Gisela read those three part response from Prasangika point of view. The first point is that in order to assert the feasibility of cause and effect relationship, one does not really has to posit a permanent self, right? And the second point, which we will deal later, is according to Prasangikas, that Shikpa, disintegration, is an entity. Many others, might, have a different standpoint on that. And then the third one is that Prasangikas have a unique way of presenting the three times. So in the case of how disintegration is accepted as an entity, ngobo, the Tibetan word shikpa, because I want to stick with the Tibetan word also in case the English word doesn't work somewhere. Literally, it means disintegration. Disintegration means things do change, right? They disintegrate moment. So that means it changes. When you change something, right? So that is caused by a cause, right? Things don't change without causes. So if the cause or that disintegration is caused by something, then that has to be an entity, right? It cannot be permanent. That's what basically Prasangikas are going to talk about later.
What did that the Higbat over the tomb? My Higbat is a go Pumbado, Kawajo, never saw a Shajo Maiva. Quite never saw a do dancing, they never saw answer, but it says that then you got Jews. Shiva in the Shiva Goboris. You mean you did what I do there. Dumasi in the Koshigni, Shildra was good to take Mary Judge. Here's Dugmarva. The Koshig citizen, you the Jensi in Shiva was taking in the Kogori who's or the reality. She's a lay Shiva Gobo in the
No, so. So just explain a little bit about how Prasangikas accept Shikpa disintegration as an entity, movable, a functional entity in that case, and because let's say of course, here the focus is on the disintegration of a karmic action, right? Leshigba. So that disintegration of a karmic action is an entity, functional thing caused by something else. So if it's caused by something, then it has to be, it cannot be permanent. It has to be a functional entity. It's just like we can talk about the disintegration of a pillar or disintegration of a vase, right? So if a vase disintegrates, right, it is caused by something. So that disintegration, according to Prasangika, has to be a functional entity or movable. Unlike what we call unproduced phenomena, dumache, right, unproduced or non-composite phenomena, then that cannot be caused by anything. It doesn't go any changes, but any composite thing, right, so it's caused by something else. So therefore, disintegration has to be a functional entity.
어디 숨쉬 드무마이 숨쉬가 당고 ronde 상제와 나제세 다 나제 다다면데 지금 두세상이 메다바 숨바다 헬렌신 돌레 루가 루제다기 레노네 개발 자야 쉬면서 해까지 왔다 레는 주부 파드 사람당 개바트메 쉬어야지 린제장은 트발레 레장 주부 소선 예바세 쉬면서 중화양 개는 발라가세 정신소 나를 구자기 린제기 땡기 강사기 강사네 당시 영어제이나 영어제도 대외 되네 뒤지 저와 나만은 데려오면 되네 심한 저의 린제기 저와테라 제자다는 믿었지 레시와바 강사 믿다바 임나 레지부 뉴드나 믿다바 이나 지부 뉴드나 매베 다 제발 더더 레시바야 쉬면서 마시바도 제발야 대좀 좋아서 디겐도 게데 민베스바도 니나 레데 따발줄 게데 각고나 가제베 세다 디비케와 줄해 시 hirkewa jurhi hirkewa jurhi si salus ba jog kedin kona seda ramikewa jurhi parles na takbar kelan la le de ram tudu keji iban per hingna le gagne ringdu loman debu juan seda te medeti şer yeseros te daşda le de metabe ne le sageda debu yugeni ni kagare da le de şu surudus pati te da donda dima tere daje le sange de ko metabe ka me do Çünkü namı nügede kora savaşçı olur. Ya ko le maşı batıyor olur. Seda le maşı batıyor da şiba süsü ni direkt doni do so dişi var da. Ta da rolu karışıyorsa bir tane marist kor kaza dikese bir joaşın mazı. Gün kaza çıkıyor var. Seda le ben de sedu ben de 충청도 대야 로 자실로도 야 그거 맛이 그것이 이게 레디가 미 자실로게 디 셰르스 셰아 가서 지기나 여러 그거 로 충청도에 그사다 Jonah Yakoto said, and the Jacob Tondo, she was said, and Jusa Comina, like I get out of the Rasa, the she say, what did he? Lady, not a catching gas on a cook, she said, last set of days, she said, the John Mars.
No. So Geshe read that whole thing on page 176, bottom part, under the first point, showing why a causal relationship makes sense, right? So that's Prasangika's point number one, that it is feasible to assert cause and effect relationship, without need to say that self has to be permanent, right? That's the whole thing. So he read that portion and stopped on top of page 177. So Geshe started explained. So here, of course, the Nyayas and the Vaiseshiks are just examples of non-Buddhist schools who assert that the conventional self that is accountable for law of karma and result has to be permanent, right? Otherwise, you cannot assert the cause and effect relationship, right, between karma and its results. And so Prasangika is objecting to that. He said, we as Buddhists, right, do not accept self to be permanent. It is impermanent, as a matter of fact, And so the point is that even though the self is impermanent, it undergoes momentary changes, right? But it still maintains continuity, right? There is no disruption in the continuity of things. So on the basis of that continuity, one can, assert the cause and effect relationship between karma and results, And so they are objecting to the Buddhist standpoint that if you say self is impermanent, then how can you explain, right? That the person who does the karma, the person who experiences the result, right? The two persons are the same person. Because it's not possible, right? Because if it's permanent, what they're thinking is that when you create the action, then that is gone completely, right? The next time, let's say, even if the results will arise, then that person who experienced the result has to be a different one, right? Nothing continues between this because you said it's impermanent. That's their objection to us. So their objections are based on, for example, we can see two aspects of the law of karma, right? In the law of karma, we say that one does not experience the result of a karma that one has not done, right? Right. But that's going to be violated. If you say self is impermanent, right? One who creates the karma is gone, and then one who experiences the result is another person. So this person did not create the karma. That person created the karma, did not experience it. So that aspect of the law of karma, right, is violated. That's one objection they're giving, right? Then the second one they say that means we say that our karmic action cannot simply be wasted, right? However long it takes. But that's exactly happening here. You said that the self is impermanent. So when you create the karma, then this person or the action stops, right? And so it's wasted. This person is not going to continue, right, to experience the karma. So your karma is wasted, So those are the objections they are laying against the Buddhists for asserting that self is impermanent, because they are not able to think that impermanent thing that changes every moment, it could still have the continuity that is uninterrupted and continuous, right? So Buddhists are saying that, we assert that impermanent things, all compound things are impermanent. That means everything changes from moment to moment. But then we do assert that across these momentary changes, there is this continuity that is uninterrupted. So on the basis of that continuity, then we can say that the person who creates the action is the same person who's going to experience the result. So Geshe-la's example is just like, we think in terms of this just lifetime. Somebody who lives 80 years old, let's say, when you were young, right, you did everything right. You worked hard, kind of thing you earned. So because of all your accomplishments, that even if you are 80 years old, but still, right, people said, okay, you did it. You deserve it, isn't it? You have a big name because you worked so hard when you were young. You have, things are going well in your life because you worked hard, so that you experience the result, isn't it? So that's very feasible, right? As we can see, although a person is no more young, has 80 years old, but whatever you did when you were young, right, we still think the same person is accountable for the actions, and now you're reaping the fruits of those actions, you know.
What is your consequence? Geshe Gyeltsen, Gyeltsen, the Sahaguma, Kashita, Medaba in Shantideva, and the Commander, Koramazo, Geshe Gyeltsen, Yamarjeta, the lady, Shane, and Duma, but go give them what they and then go Taware do this. And they give them what they and the colleague, Medab, she gets you on guard and they could do Jigmaras. She's the Carson, the Medavina. Until Shajisan Teamidus. That was the Shaga Jizinto things, so this was the Kaji.
So where they got hung up from a Buddhist point of view is that they are not able to conceptualize, understand that how impermanent things can undergo momentary changes, yet they also, across these momentary changes, there is a continuity, right? So they are not able to conceptualize that, you know, because for them, disintegration means non-existence, right? So you create a karma, like in the first place. When the second moment of the karma comes, the first is disintegrated, means it's non-existent. So then what is there, right? So for them, disintegration means non-existence, you know. Person who created the karma disintegrates, so you are no more existent. How can that person be accountable for the result of that action, right? That's the difficulty. So therefore, somehow they thought it makes sense to say that the self has to be permanent, and then things work well, right, for them, right? Yeah.
Well, there's another better. Geshe, this judo she or the Sena Kore, tell ya, Jones Kaya Marsa, the cock, Metavena, but also mentioned the Lord Jashukushulon, the Geshe. Quangama Puchum, Lord, you shoes, Jonga, you sums the Kumanja Kudiana. And then do that call Lord Jashukushua ladies and the court the show the Yonsigro. Quite Kumat Gui of the Shin show Lobo. Shadatico, no more Gama to that, the Lord Jashu, Juji, Lobo Drasara. You know, could Jaslu, Koramus Guyomar. China called Jesus or the Kokuman was she called Shiva Moyaganga Yungora. She's a tirari, less angry than you, Mapalia, to do Momoshina, and doing you sugar.
So from Buddhist point of view, that yes, things are impermanent, so is the self. It's undergoing momentary changes, but across all these momentary changes, there is the continuity of the self. On the basis of that, we can assert that there is a cause and effect relationship. The self is accountable for all the good and bad actions you do, and all that results, right, arise, and you experience it. And it doesn't matter however long, like time goes between the action you have done and the result it comes up, but you are still like accountable for that. And the example Geshe gives is like, say, again, a person who's 80 years old, 90 years old, 100 years old, let's say, when you're very young, okay, so maybe you're a little bit wild, I don't know, you stole something, but somehow maybe you thought you were lucky, right? So for many, many years, you didn't get caught. But then through some investigation, some new ways of doing things, then they come up to you, you're already 80 years old. Now they said, we have all the evidence that when you were young, you did this negativity, right? And so when it's proven, this 80-year-old person said, you know what? I didn't do it. I'm 80 years old. You know, that was different. You can't, right? You're still held accountable. And so you might have to pay the penalty, you know. So although this person has changed from a very young to the advanced elderly person, but so many changes, but person is the same, right? It's accountable for what you did before, and now you are paying for that action. So many years in between, you were lucky, didn't get caught, it didn't matter, isn't it? So that's what Buddhists are saying. A karma can be created, and many eons might happen in between, but when it ripens, or you are accountable for that karma, good and bad, you will experience the result.
What that did, that should do, but say, the coach of this, that about the lady, 种种呢，就是大大对吧？来样送的，大外的人呢，联系吧的，日本人话说小气的，那么你这种话的，这你希望说说也是，如何也没容易写的，空的有些，天下个大别大，我比告诉些吧，的那么大。大话的小心没人去，我的样写也是。日本的那边去的呢，确实是大话写人呢，杨小心这样说，写嘛呢，让人要我，他妈是小，他妈是那西巴巴的，西巴巴他的一巴的，那么用的说西巴巴没巴的。那些个就是牛不没把那日本出边，我家你给是这个的，这当然面对那日本的家完了，对呢，那切吧说中就呗，中就呢是但是这吧透明多，我那接下样上级路了。les sok du ki khansa te nami nyung du ki nami nyung du ki nga khansa di yin me yin na ti taban jor la me na le sokwa po nami ma nyung sing nyung po le ma sa pe se le ma shi ba le shi ba shu su ba so chung chung ngar je ba说呢，那个报名是些呢，我这个大现在大的，全是那些现在呢，连上的大的，可只有嘛，你把这可能俺是电视的，那可大话是这个是，俺可搞这个那电视搞这个那可连啥子的这边有个要嘛是，那这边有个的连上个是可他的啥子，看看说啥意思。连嘛是吧？这吧的，是吧？虚少这个东西，现在他讲不没得不，大把连这的大把嘛，没大把人心是的了，人下去个连这个下去这个嘛都是，我就说的是。
So Geshe read most of what's on page 177 there, except the last paragraph. And so the Nyayas and the Vaisheshiks are kind of debating with the Buddhists here that, if you assert that a person who does the action is the same person who will experience the result of that action, then you have to accept that the self is permanent, just like us. It's not like you're on our side, isn't it? But if you say that the self or the person is impermanent, then the person who does the action disintegrates, becomes non-existent, right? You annihilated that, so then you cannot say this person is going to experience the result of the karma he or she created, isn't it? So by doing that, you are violating those two aspects of the karma we mentioned above. Experience the result of the karma you did not create, and whatever karma you created simply wasted. So those are the charges levied against the Buddhist by the non-Buddhist logician Nyayas and the Vaisheshik, or the particularists there.
我觉得他可能让下可能第二个人是，我这个是大把的联系，大把多个有的人我的想法，可能这是个吧。等大些吧说，早说就在多没多，我那天上上去路了，我来速度一看啥的，那没用的一就。我看啥第一呢没，天那大把叫了，没能来说我不，那没用心，牛不来嘛是不是？来些吧去是吧？所以用 我结果说那把帮们你不说闲的时候，这个，但是可这个最晚的就是连的呢，那么牛不的到连啥吧你连啥个你的这个，我就可能就那个呢，连啥吧不这个，那么牛个有那连啥不考啥大话这种是吧？那么用个那连啥我的个连啥的个就是那么用个考啥考老师啥我连的，现在连马西巴写完的，西巴学说应该这个东西，现在第连这个东西，现在大话开嘛了呢，没大话开了，其实连马西巴写完的，西巴学啥应该这个东西说的是我的。
So basically, their charge against the Buddhists is pretty much captured in this one paragraph on page 177. Let me read it and then translate what Geshe just said. One might respond, in your Buddhist system, is the person that accumulates karma the person or self that experiences the maturation or not? Is this the same person experiencing the result? Is a different one, right? That's what they're asking question. If it is, if it's the same person, then they say, is it permanent? Just like we said it, right? If it is not, if we say it's not permanent, impermanent, then the accumulator of the karma does not experience the maturation of the karma. Okay? Since the experiencer of the karmic ripening did not accumulate the karma, and the action performed would perish, the same problem remains as before, which are intractable. So as Krishna explained, that Nayayaks and Vaiseshiks, non-Buddhists, are debating with the Buddhists, saying that if you were to say that it's the same person who does the action and experiences the result anyway later time, then you have to be with us that it is a permanent, But if you hold that person, the self, is impermanent, then you cannot, right, assert that person is going to experience the result of his karma or her karma, which means you are violating those two cardinal aspects of the karma, right? The person who does the action disintegrates, become non-existent, right? So his or her karma is wasted. The person who experienced the karmic result, right, experienced the karma, he or she didn't do it. So you are violating two cardinal aspects of the law of karma, right? Those are the arguments or charges they are labeling against Buddhists. Yeah.
我的地走的，现在那么用的脸上给卡着就是这里的，现在脸速度一考察的那么用面讲，速度的用度一考察，你看通过这个运动轻松的，大概我就是下去结尾，我一边是年练习吧的，也那么用啊，像你们形容，其实就是在面多。所以呢，兄弟的也有那个，看上别人骑着的，我住有些俺妈的骑嘛说，那样，找我是第二现在这呢，去上考察的那个新的，你不个，变成这这个我变成我这那个新个大这个了，那个能大这个那下两个是吧？
No.
现在那下两个的那个新我嘛。那这那个是那搞啥是吧？
No.
在那个那没事，那这那个是吧？这把吓住是吧？
No.
现在第二第把这给这个的，我是看我现在这个人，这是那我这这个是他可能其实他的现在呢一些呢，因为老就是这个这个老做这些呢，人就要老是什么东西可以的，你们老做些偏到没有啥啥是吧？
No.
可以看看啥看看啥啥啥。
No.
现在这是这个这产业的呗，现在我是扬州的，毛毛一来州都是。现在这个这个这样子，可能就多现在去，联系马西巴这样的西巴学校的州嘛是的联交的。
I don't know. So Kishla again gives some more examples of how, like from the Nyayas and Vaisheshik's point of view, let's say a person works for a month, right? For the monthly wages or whatever. So they think that if the Buddhists say that self of the person is impermanent, right? Then at the end, the person who gets the wages, right? He didn't do the job. He just got a freebie money. The one who did the hard work, well, he didn't get anything because he became non-existent. And then they said, so impermanent person is not working. It has to be permanent, right? That's what they're charging. Or like even another example is education. You go to school for 10 years, right? You are going to earn your degree or whatever. But according to them, that if that person is impermanent, well, the one who earns the degree is a different person. The one who went through all the, difficulty is another person. So this is not working. Of course, I mean, from Buddhist point of view, of course, the answers are that first they said, if you go with your school, that person or self is permanent, well, a permanent self cannot perform action, cannot have an agency. Permanent person cannot do something or experience something or something, right? So there's a contradiction. You are saying person is a permanent, but that person is going to do action and reap the fruit. So you are contradicting yourself, right? A permanent entity or person cannot do that. That's part of the answer. But another answer that Geshe will explain more is according to Buddhist schools of thought, that all things impermanent or composite undergo momentary changes. That's in the law of nature. Okay? But across these momentary changes, there is a continuity, isn't it? So on the basis of that continuity of a phenomenon of aggregates, right, upon which the self is attributed, then we can assert it's the same person who did the action who experienced the result. So there is no issue in this matter. That's how the Prasangikas are explaining things to them. As we said before, for Nyayaks and Vaisheshiks who feel that self has to be permanent, I mean, they're just a representative of some schools, is because they are not able to, as we said, understand, conceptualize, process this concept that things can undergo momentary changes, but at the same time, they can exist, right, continuously. So that's where the problem is. Yeah.
Moi, tena chegi da takpa kelang ne, yang shashi zhong so shibara, ma ranzi gewa mo. Tel masi, shibaba da jewaba deba ibata, nami nyungdi iso shibaba meba da, le shibi tusu nyungaba meba ne, rigbe chubi uja yekaya dego de, Teta mide nani rigwa dengi le la dina. Da cheba tewa soji jo jene de zeba tome do. Wani checha sanji lu la le sokdu yi kanza de nami nyungdu ji su nga kanza di yin me yin te taba jo la me na le sokwa bo nami ma nyungshin. Nyope le masa bichir, le shiba chuseba so yo de cheva so na neba pomi tu de shena le so de khaza ti nami nyo meya meja so de da nyung de ji khaza ni ka pumbo che ge ji da hir sun de ta be ngazam ji chahi se chebe ngai be ye le shiba da ye nami nyo sha rumi shirjo deda me do se sunde ne oti ko ni bi cho ke ga statire se da nganzo nangba so je da no de da ba ne ko le sa wa da nyo ji ga chaji 남자 탑진 지으려고 그러고
No.
근데 chaji 사지 강가 미다와 샤고 인다 아니 거기 강가에 계신것이 요즘에도 이제 강사 윤세가 다가 부모리 풍부 윤세가 다가 소해서 이 되게 내용도 용게 요 레스 사베도 요모디 메와다 요 내용도 사와디 가타나 되는 가요 말이 거기 근데 윤세가 sonda 티 디그레스 다디스 오다 도나
No. So on page 177, in the second paragraph, part of the Buddhist answers to the Nyayas and Vaisheshiks there, that if you go by your assertion that self or person is permanent, then, how can a permanent self can do action and have an agency and experience the result, right? That's a contradiction in terms, right? You have that issue in your system. And continuing with the response there, that is in the last paragraph of page 177. And so as Geshe explained, that from Buddhist point of view, right, when we talk about chaje lesum, actor, agency, and action outcome, all these things is only possible on the understanding of impermanence, isn't it? If something is permanent, we cannot talk about an agent, action, and outcome, right? That whole presentation is going to fall apart, right? And what is in the last paragraph is about how, as Buddhists assert that things that are impermanent undergo momentary disintegration or changes, but across this momentary disintegration, continuity is maintained. An example given is that of a self or person, which is merely designated onto the continuity of the aggregates, isn't it? Yes, aggregates are undergoing momentary changes, right? But the self, that's attribute designated on the continuity remains. So on the basis of that, then we can say that the self or the person is accountable for their karmic actions, right? You will experience the result of the karma. And so there is no contradiction in that sense. So here is an instrumental sort of statement. I'll read it in the last paragraph. This is our response. Even though the person who accumulates karma is not the one who experiences the karmic ripening or maturation, the two persons at the time of the accumulation and at the time of karmic maturation are held to be a single continuum of aggregate that are the basis of designation, right? And in both schools, Nyayas and the Buddhists accept that the person who does the action and the person who experiences the action are distinct, isn't it? So we can only assert distinct if they are impermanent. In a permanent, we can't accept the distinctiveness here. And so although the one who experienced the result did not exist at the time of creating the cause, right? The karmic action, cause and effect, right? But based on the same continuity of the same aggregate person, we can assert that the one who did the action before is the same person experiencing its result later on, right? So that's and it has to do with what called the designation and the continuity of the aggregates.
Tēnā kūjā kē lōng dēne xēn dī pōyé dā dāwa dā rāngshī rīwa khayā mēndē bār dā xī pōngbō yūnshī gā dēne dāwa lē lē shibā bā dā nyō bā rā zhō bē lē dē mē dā bē chō mē dō xē lē dā mō dē dā nē shūng dī sām dē liu lē dā kē dēne nyōng nyā bē number todi lobate de der xiao xin ni la jia yan xin xie dong ju dong so xi xiao ni ju de so yi xiao ni chua chua tam ba so xin ju xi ba da ro 수연디 죄를 장 당미 폭발상이도 유머 레기 모두시 세바 파멜 중기니 맘메케디 예디도 해왔다 풍부 준상라 따발레 시르베 되봤다지 강사 내내 현드 포함해야 파르시기 풍부 윤에 제시 풍부하다 텔레 모디 시바다 텔레 시시다 텔레 라리양 시 파르시 소지 풍부 윤게 메셔도 코에세 메타바 예비셰 다다 메죠 풍부 윤 예소스 주바 민게와네 페나 맘메게 찍마이야 윤지 유신도 좋아 미거와 해노스 해노 마멜레 셰베 빼야 루즈지 카도 마메 메노 그 이시 사부 jordan de 풍부니서 좋아야 미보양 미보 파량 그도차 시 엄마 때문에 이거를 송받다 또 받다 티레레 티양 빼레레 인생 조주 줘봐라 소문이 빼 제가 자고 티 수제와 시보드 제와셔다 주에 돈일 시고소스 어디 다이네 고발을 디고 아니 가서 신자 렌즈다 파르지 루즈도 가가 셰게 가가 제와 셰고리지 근데 제와 다 대시메스 어디 쓰고세
So Geshe read the page 178 and stopped on top of page 179, and his a few word commentary is on. It says we at the bottom of page 178 there is a quotation from Arya Nagarjuna's Essence of Interdependence there, and it's called Pratit Samutpada Hridaya, and so in the Buddhism, right, we assert that. What is it? One dies, then there is the partho, intermediate state, and then one is reborn, isn't it? And so we can talk about these three things which are interlinked, and the details of that is explained. His author says, I'm not talking about this here, but it's in the Nagarjuna's work, and which he cited here.
살리자베 도창발레 제가 쇼가야 지된데네 지데바르디 미보 미무지 미보 메지 요다게 마자마 메베실 리드 지부 모바라 디어도 페나 랍지 시베 메노 시 킹골라 메노 그 킹골라 신지 수예 모바야 요도 페나 시베 메노 메노 그 킹골라 신지 수예 노아 러심 메노 그 킹골드 마보 메지 요데 마자마 메베실 대신도 모바 요도 해 리견도 춘다데 제기 춘다 대신도 다수 춘나도 나이 배게 된도 양들 요다 제상마 메베실 제외 내니 인소쇼 joe niente del sabun number chivali le de nyimo nan je cheve mendo so ji yugo ngomba jobo sheda tama che bungbo namja gala gaba nyeji ji tse cheve shatobe bungbo nam 상대 터메긴도 중화라서 저대 해송스 네 제시까지 세봉보 제가시도 때 동반이 임비 동반이 임비 돌이 레니 여도 나바미바야 여도 추스 다르다바야 마도 풍부인데 늘 풍부 힌두 인수조하시비 시바보 미미소스 내가 추스 다바자인데 내다데 내예wen 디중 계속 송스 땡에들의 민기에 지된데야 될 신이 Jigden Shen the Poshi Romaja, Lisi Nane, Naya Shumeza, Huayang the Kada, Livri Tabara Mai Sheva Middle Nugget, Lesa Major, Leso Major, Never Taja, me, Teon, Shen, River, me, Shen, River, Minjur, me, Shen, Yoa, Soa, Joa, me, Poa, me, Shil Poa, me. 탐지 예바이 마이 메바메 대단한 너무 다바이 세다 제발 박도 레장 레 제발 박도 레장 르레레 현다드 예수 소무스 데레다 거제 내시 시와보다 이네 가사 저할랭기 가사 데레 빅게 가사 타이에 담아담아서 요마리 티야르디 모두 비그러 가사데 따바 요마리 세나 코 교데 제 제오다 아니 코 시기 지 어디 뉴마시 비세네 아니 코 토모메 다다바도 투즈 누고 어리시 텔리 아니 야요 마리시세
No. So Geshe read page 179 and stopped on top of point 80. So a number of texts have been cited. For example, on top of page 179, there is what I usually call a compendium of Bodhisattva training, here translated as an anthology of training that also cites Salistampa Sutra or the Rice Seedling Sutra, giving examples of reflection of face in the mirror. And then goes on, and there are more sutras like Sutra of Great Emptiness and what is it? The King of Samadhi Sutras. So as Krishna started to explain that from Buddhist point of view, that there is no intrinsic self or anything intrinsic that goes from one life into another life, right? That came from somewhere, come to here, then from here it will go somewhere else. But everything that we talk about, when we talk about death, intermediate state, and rebirth, it is all conventionally speaking, and that's based upon mere designation, right, of self or person on the continuity of aggregates, And aggregates, themselves do disintegrate, right? They undergo momentary changes, disintegration, but the continuity is maintained. And some of the aggregates, even they completely cease to exist at the time of the death, But it doesn't mean nothing continues there, because the designation, the conventional self designated on the continuity of things, it continues from one life to another life. And then all the things happening in this life, other lives, these are basically because of causes and conditions, isn't it? When causes and conditions assemble together, things happen. If causes and conditions are not assembled, nothing is going to happen, right? So that's the Buddhist kind of perspective, and there is no contradiction in those assertions, right? No contradiction to say that even though things undergo momentary changes, the continuity is maintained, right? On the basis of that continuity, conventional self is designated. And then due to the causes and conditions that things happen, right? If causes and conditions not there, nothing is going to happen. And in all this assertion, presentation, Buddhists said we don't see any inconsistency or contradictions here. So basically, the whole Buddhist presentation here is kind of grounded in the notion of Pratit Samudpat or dependent rising, Tendel, right? So one of the very often quoted lines, which is rendered in this translation, is when this is present, that arises. Right? In Tibetan, right, di yube di chung, because this exists, so that that arises, isn't it? So this kind of very cryptic statement, short one, is a very powerful and profound one. It reflects the law of interdependent origination here. So Geshe says that if things are impermanent, then we cannot talk about because this exists, that arises, right? Or because of this present, right, that arises. And so when we talk about death, well, when the causes conditions bring about the death, isn't it? It doesn't happen on its own. And then when the causal conditions happen, then you're reborn, right? So it's all dependent upon causes and conditions, whether it is being born or whether we are existing or whether we die. And so that shows us the role and the significance of patit samutpat or dependent arising.
Dono takshi je tata treki, tingi de shingi jodi mewe, tente shunyi le dene paru du yu chamo zanya powa me de, oma tente yin le, tongpa yin kone shue nang le, tongpe shue nang yuwan chur, siye so gemi ke le nang rang du, tingi para xe kyang, jibu minchi be kyong me de, le de da gaba da shokze sheni nami jinshi ki le ki mewa khanda jobe khanda jobe she yube shir sheda kena kaja chima da dode wa kaji sem yun da sese wa kaji kuyi da kuyi ke kuyi mishebe sem zamba da ronji ba da ki yi ki naba hi de this some lenses ge de köbe dendiği kansa de kansa kos o de da kansa jozu mer da kaje pumu ji za kaje na ji bu kansa ise jo o da tenju zo da song de ni ji ma se de se ji ha ma ba se de kansa da mer se ji ha da mer yo di tonda ro de pe de gas ko yo ma ri se da.
So Geshe read a little bit from page 180 there and said explain, especially the stanza, paragraph 2 there. And so according to Buddhist perspectives, when we think in terms of positive and negative karmas or any kind of karma, right, because karma undergo momentary changes, disintegration, right? The karma, when the second instant or the moment where the karma arises, the first moment has ceased to exist. But across all these momentary changes, cessation and arising, the continuity is maintained, right? And so on the basis of the continuity of karma, continuity of aggregate, so many things, so Buddhists come with different, examples of what really is the basis for accountable for the law of karma and results, right? And we can look across rebirths. And so this is where in the second paragraph, we can see that for example, Southern Tikas and Kashmiri Vaibhashikas, they say that mental continuum, same in Tibetan Yun, so that is accountable for karma and results. That's what exists across lives or existence. And then those who accept Alayan Vijnan or the storehouse consciousness, like fundamental Kunshi, then they say that's it, not any other kind of cognition or mental state, but it is the storehouse consciousness that is accountable for that. And then those even mindfulness school, some section, we don't accept a storehouse, but we said it's the mental consciousness, the sixth consciousness, right? That is, so people come with all these different examples, to assert there is a basis accountable for karmic action and results. And then for Prasangikas, then they say, if you look for something under ultimate analysis, nothing is findable. So it all comes to mere designated I, right? It's a mere designation on the basis of continuity that exists, right? So all this, even within Buddhist schools of thought, right, all these different assertions come about. And so we will stop there today and we welcome your questions. First, I have a question to begin with, and I'll come back to you. Not I have, Geshe Haramba has forwarded to me, so I'm going to read it. So this question, it doesn't matter who is asking, this is one of our very, how should I say, old-time students. We all love him or her, or them. So I'll read the whole thing. Good morning. First of all, I would like to thank Geshe for the teachings that he has given us for these many years. I love and respect what you have taught us over these many years. However, I have a question regarding this section of the book you are teaching from. I don't understand the necessity for going over these Indian schools and their tenets. I find their tenets difficult to understand, and I don't know if it adds anything to my understanding of the tenets of the Buddhist schools. I was always taught that what was important to understand was the progression of the tenets of the Buddhist school from the lowest schools to the highest schools. Can you explain why it is so important for you to teach us the tenets of these Indian schools? Even if they teach these tenets in the monastery, it just doesn't feel like it's important for us Westerners to know these things. So I'm asking you to explain why it is that we need to go over these Indian schools and their tenets. Thank you most respectfully, your long-time student. Okay, so actually I informed Geshe-la about it, remind him. Actually, I requested him to talk at the beginning, but Geshe-la forgot, I think. Again, thank you. Kitu nyingba shibuchi rwa again. And gang lo mango ringbala ya tu zi chenbi and be sungzhe nama de kora ka din samshe shugu yosa rwa again. In that danda shung de la ma de galia and chiribe jaga shung mango che de dos rwa again. And to get the share go I kora go ba junze la get Thomas on sa rwa again. Di chang ne chi ngalia nangbe kasoda chi shen tyoba rwa again. Nangbe ki ani 熊先了就骗到了给汤姆说是吧个，但关边拿了在的拉不拉边那个有的，我就弄不着把了呀的去那边熊的先过给什么给民都是吧个，但俺都看的过来看的话是呢，南边住的，但我们呢看嘛把写是吧，但这个的那个差的是吧嘛都去那边就熊些被过不中间的看的呢。这里给把写定了去了，哇个，那个中间写了哪啥？那边开销他呢，其中宁把这个学过啥？
那
开销的点边他呢，其中宁把这个干的学过啥个？
可其中宁把那块年干着起来还不够拿这个块。俺在老中时的咱那几个小时几个人那路上几个路上看着的。几个现在开始对吧？刚刚拉过对吧？
那是。
前次几个是拉，现在没拉这个。这个那么我写说那这个最可能是路上就啥，那说是希望也记住我是吧？
那是。
现在也过去没他我写呀，他那了，对吧？我写过，我听着做听着。
那是。So Geshe says is that. One of the reasons among many is that even in the Western education system, right, and you try to be inclusive in terms of perspectives and look at different perspectives, right? Eastern perspective, Western perspective, the third perspective, whatever, right? So by looking at different perspectives, we are able to expand our way of thinking. And so then if you really want to deeply understand some things, all these perspectives are very helpful as to be able to sort out things. So there is benefit, to that in that sense, right? Different perspectives bring us different way to look at things, right? Different angles. Desken, deshe mangsu chong ma ma dum rasasken.
La.
King dak the goba chumze the deshe tes mangsu chong ma ke kollo deg marwa ke. I'm asking Geshe to say more.
That was it. Those ones of 这些的在那，这。我说没这个路上呗呀，这个蒙古路上可是路上这个刚刚写过呀写，你知道你现在呀没现在什么都同学什么都是呀这个，这刚刚有的写呀说到现在什么时呢？那么我写个啥？那么我写这个马上那么写嘛是吧？
No.
시다 되게 다다 데려와 치료가 그다 해야 가서 돼요 다다 투주 주셔서 치료 너무 투주 주셔서 제가 봐도 생기도와
No, so.
되게 무대 진남지 흉노를 시다 남삼 대다다 고원절라 다 이네 대만 줄시
No, so.
그래서 치료 흉노들아 제발 좀 가져야지 셔 나는 상위 정도들이야 대만 셔 누구도 없어
No, so.
응.
No, so. So Geshe says that, I mean, when we allow for multiple perspectives to things, of course, that really helps us to have a comprehensive, right, understanding and knowledge of different issues and topics, So people who are called highly educated, so because they have seen too many things perspective, right? They're able to think in a way that most of us with a limited perspective, we couldn't think. So they have more comprehensive, expanded knowledge over that. And so Geshe, example of why it matters to study this non-Buddhist school of thought in the sense that, for example, now I don't know the Indian name of that teacher, you probably can figure it out, but he's the author of this Praise of the Exceptional One on page 180 on the top, Vashita Vasta. So this is praise in honor of the Shakyamuni Buddha. And so in that praise, he said, because he studied many Hindu, didn't say Hindu, non-Buddhist school of thought, right? So he said, the more I studied those schools of thought, now I'm able to have a much deeper appreciation for what you have taught, that your discourse is very distinctive and profound in a way that none of those things were able to target. So therefore, or the exceptional one, Buddha, right? So I have developed this kind of unshakable faith, right, in your teaching. So that's what happens, when we can do sort of a comparative study or that context, right?
등산아 다들 그 zanlin하시는 rolling 소도서 쇼로 담이라들 야 소네 세지 삼자 디레시 랭도 하디 들 가르서는 그 야제도 차게지로 지금다 되는 제가 소소 쇼로 디시샤는 디리 zan린 시도 시가서 말아
So I mean, even these modern days, Geshe said, why there are so many conferences of like interfaith conference, interfaith like a seminar, this is happening, because we feel the need to be able to understand each other's way of thinking, system of thought, isn't it? And otherwise, if we're only concerned with our own school of thought, then we're like, okay, none of those are my business, right? And what's happening in the world, that doesn't matter. I'm here, right? Whatever they are doing in that school of thought, none of my business, right? Then it becomes very exclusionary thing, isn't it? So today's world is globalized world. We invite all interfaith and let them talk about what's right. So we expand our knowledge about each other, right? We see that has benefit to that, right? So kind of same to this one, yeah. So that's Geshe-la's response there. Originally, I thought I might add some footnote, then I decided not to. No, just my footnote. I skipped. It's okay. Okay. So this is my footnote. Okay, people who are listening, don't think I'm translating Geshe-la because I'm translator, right? You see me. I mean, the first of the things that a lot of these Buddhist schools of thought, right? When you look in the historical context, right, they arose, right? And there have been much debate between the non-Buddhist schools of thought, primarily Hindus at the time, and through this kind of dialogue and debate and arguments, so both sides have been benefited. Their philosophical system has been refined like anything, isn't it? They benefited. And as Geshe, that example, the more we know about these other schools of thought, then we are able to kind of understand, appreciate, right, what we have in our school of thought. Otherwise, we might intellectually think we have the superior thing it is, but it's just a head stuff, right? We really don't know. We're just claiming that. But only when we compare, contrast, right, and understand, and I personally feel, okay, that's me, that even though a lot of this non-Buddhist school of thought, I don't know, but if I check with my own misconceptions about self, a lot of them exist. It's not like Vaisheshikas or Nyayikas. It's Tenzin Dorjee, I mean, who claims to be Buddhist, has this permanent self, it has to be, So I think in that sense, it's very helpful, right? Although we're talking about Nyayikas or other Samkhayas, but it's the Tenzin who has these views which are very already 1,000 years ago, they said it, right? So that helps me to be able to counteract my misconception, right? For me, that is a big help, right? And sometimes I know it's very kind of a bone-jarring headache through this 25 this, 25 that, this and that. All these terms is like a kind of giving a headache, right? But that being said, there are so many benefits, to that. So today in the monastic universities in India, oftentimes they also invite Indian, thinkers and the Hindus, everything to present their seminars, the viewpoint, and that's a great development, and sometimes, honest with you, I think even though in our monasteries we debate and say that I don't think we know the non-Buddhist schools of thought as much as they know, right? That's true. That's their study. So when they come and explain, we're like, oh, wow, there's more than what we have here, a little bit. So that's very benefit. Yeah, go ahead. Okay. So first we'll go to cyberspace, and I will come back if there are any questions. Sorry. So yeah.
Once you attain Buddhahood, do you continue to change moment to moment?
Could you please open the glass panel, right? I get some echo from that. So. Okay, thank you. One more time, Kristina.
Once you attain Buddhahood,
yes,
do you continue to change moment to moment?
Okay, sure. 跟你学这个tra业上的话个，但俺说早上结尾呢，上结尾的话个，上结才就讲了，咱那给这有把的做这个人少，但不是上结以呢，给这有把如果什么事的话个，如果要来this session 能过的个，
那，
但那俺说 this 个的话个，给这有把如果要的军那个时候的话，但不然只话的上结说呢。다 단다게 다 상계디 랍신 디고도 거란다 르는데 상계디야 기지 유버 도겐레 상계디 다 거다 라면다 딱 봐야 되고 다게
아니 상계게 당가서 쳐서게 기지 정말 유어다
당가서 상계네 그 미다고랑다 되대로
그래 그 상계도 다 당가래 좀 말봐
나래 다이네 야 상계게 추구도 찍을래 양디 딱봐 찾으셔야 말 당가서
뭐다 고려다 그 꾸시다 드레게라시 추구선 드레게도 당가셔야 돼야 돼现在我是用这是不是同时쳐서 그때 상계라다 되라
So Geshe is saying, because I always encourage Geshe to say a little more. Geshe can be very then I'm like, that's not enough. I'm trying to. So, okay, because when we talk about how things are impermanent and undergo momentary change, that's in the law of nature, right? It's not like Buddha made it up or something. That's what it is. So even as we become Buddha enlightened being, just as we are impermanent now we are enlightened being, we're still impermanent, right? That hasn't changed anything. You know what I mean? So we don't become permanent once we become fully enlightened, right? But then I thought, Geshe, can you speak a little bit more? There are many aspects of enlightenment, right? Not just a little. Yeah. But you said, like, when we talk about Buddhas, right? Enlightened bodies, a certain aspect are considered permanent, right? But usually people say, I want to be Buddha, right? When you become Buddha, you're still impermanent, right? Nothing has changed. So that means you go momentary changes. Yes. Any other question? Yes.
Would Geshe please explain the moments of mind and the continuity that goes from life to life from the Prasangika point of view?
And in that doing the net a lot of again. Or dig tangible Lucy Sarge and decision on us again.
That is a bit what that some June says that could you the nigger was saying him as Lord Mahonga City was a Triada. This year is the directing high humor. Could you was anything imagine she has was a sending here. That moon is it that the ceremony here. 이게 유지성 성장이 돼야 되려면 뭐지 드레트면은 드레트는 동화로
tinju timo maembe gen diji semde wage keji yuba dro de bachlo kyun de timo ma ke she yor tinju ba
timo ma sana ta de muda ba jigwa de da
jigwa wa tinju ba le jigwa wa so when because I want Geshe to come up clearly the problem Geshe said here in terms of the momentary changes, right? I mean, that's the same in all Buddhist school. Prasangika doesn't have a unique perspective on that. But you said, talk about life. From Prasangika point of view, could you explain the moments of what mind or consciousness and then the continuity, right? So in terms of continuity, what Geshe said is the continuity has to be there across these momentary changes. Like for example, the reason, among many things, why we are able to remember, recall, right, what we did many years ago, because there is a continuity, isn't it? If there's no continuity, we can't recall anything. We won't remember, right? So that shows us that there is a continuity of things. And then, of course, those who have high realizations called they have this recollection of many past lives. That's some kind of samadhi. So they can not only recall few years, but they can recall many years, right? So that's also based upon the continuity of, right, the mind. Yeah. Any other? Sure.
When physical pain arises in the body, how should one apply the logic of dependent origination to work with it as a direct experience?
Sure. ane sang anzo lü le ya naza chungba wa ge lü le naza chungba wa lü le naza chungba ina ane tende gi gyumje samlo ta ne wa ge ane naza de le ya da ji khar so tongle ro che da ko le chik so ro na sa lü le naza chungba wa ge tende gi gyumje da ma so ne samlo ta ne wa ge ta naza de nyam da ka so ko de le ya ka so da tongle che da che ro wa na sa
다들 동네에서 지다 다 코에 님이 돼서다 되게 상하라다 그 깨워져 들라서 다 등에도 이어가듯이 아니 그 설다도 매시 나고 들바 심리도 뭐지 셔셔 아니 그 수요시 아주 시선아 아니 그 나자라시라 그 정도 성우야 선 등에 매서 나자의 양안 좀 좋니 아니 그냥 나자 가로 얘나라 샘 고용고에나 야종이라면 야샤르와 나자 때문에 생기시되는 야베 미카이 생기시 시되더라요. 맞죠?
So Geshe says that like, in that particular example of physical pain and how we can use the thinking of dependent arising as a logic or rationality to deal with it, right? Geshe says, I mean, there are many ways to do with that, but the one he said is that, that tells us our condition in samsara, isn't it? As long as we keep staying or reborn in samsara, right, it seems there's no way out. We will have physical pain, we will have suffering, So that might help us to be able to develop aversion to the samsaric condition existence. That's one. But at the same time, we can say, that, as long as I'm in samsara, so that's part of the life, isn't it? And if there's something we can do about it, because the pain is brought by causes and conditions, then maybe don't need to worry too much. If there's nothing I can do about it, so at least we accept, right? So at the mental level, right, by thinking about the dependent arising and this kind of thinking, it can lighten up a little bit, isn't it? So sometimes people have such a serious physical difficulty, but because their mind is able to think that way, so it lightens up their burden. For some people, the physical pain is not that much, but their mind sucks. The Geshe didn't say that. Completely they worry like crazy anything. So that anxiety in some way kills them. So I think the way of thinking, the perspective, opening up the mind, broadening our perspective can lighten up even physical pain and dealing with it. Yeah. Oh, so you have that. Well, good.
All right, got it.
It is on.
It wasn't on. Now it's on. Back to disintegration as a functional entity. Just making sure that we're referring to it here as a non-static abstraction. A denmenduche, right? Are we classifying?
Can you start again? I missed something in the beginning.
Back to disintegration.
Oh, disintegration, yes.
Which we are labeling as a functional entity.
Yes.
Are we classifying it as a non-static abstraction? Are we classifying it as a non-static abstraction? It's not a form.
Oh, non-static.
Yeah, as a denmenduche. Yeah, are we? That's the first question.
Right. No. Yes. Oh, good. I'll come back. Yes.
Denmenduche.
Okay, denmenduche is non.
It's not person.
Right. Okay, yeah. Right. Kurang kandi tangbo shwe did. Thank you for going slow on me. So that I did do a better job. Tagi di shung di nar gen di she bro gen shikba ngobo she ro ge tenjo begi. Shikba ngobo she zan so di ngobo she indu kala mona ga ladu kala shikba di gen demin du che lab do ge. Se da di chik session na ro na so da di shikba di demin du che inda chama ro ge.
Shikba se ne this or that jida rangje meje zo je ne shikba ngobo she ma re.
No.
Kaje gomba jo ka re chik kora meba songa de la shikba se go.
No.
Da kora no yo ngo lo de ga ne ko ta ba res. Da rangje meje de yo ge shikba se ta ba mi shikba ngobo ke le ma ba.
No.
Da tenjo wa chim jo ko ba me re jo de jo de jen de se de ko me re sa yin za. En ko ngobo re go dos.
No.
我这可是我没有这样见识，那我们唐伯虎这没有这种话是吧？
No.
现在我们那这个见识对嘛是吧？现在我喜欢是我这是他喜欢是我没有我老嘛这个人这边是这样老总这嘛的，我老嘛的那有刚被掐了当被，因为我喜欢是要的是。
근데 부바 매버 차바들 따고 차지 마도 매버 차고 거나
저거 가서 그 말이.
차고 거나
그 차고 가라 따고 차지 그래서.
잡딩 오버스. 근데 데멘 두제 배 좀전이.
데멘 두제 다 두제 배도 요 말고. 뭐래 그래 뭐래 희망도 말봐 소도 말봐 되도.
So Geshe is saying is that this is a little difficult concept, right? To even conceptualize that the Tibetan word is shikpa, translated as disintegration here, which according to Prasangika school of thought, that's one unique, that it is an entity, a functional entity, because it's caused by something. So the example Geshe gives is like say, when a pot is destroyed, right, disintegrated completely. So that non-existence of the pot, not itself, but there is what we call the conceptual part of it, right, labeling part of it. So that according to the Prasangika is a functional thing, is caused by something. Whereas the Sevatantrika, Madhyamika, and other Buddhist schools of thought, they would consider the shikpa as permanent, all right? And so why it is the what called the dimindvije known, right? Because all things are classified into three types: form, cognition or consciousness, and non-compositional, right? So we can see easily that that disintegration is not a form. It's not a cognition. So it's a thing, right? So the only category left is the non-compositional factor. Yeah.
That's what disintegration is.
Yeah.
That's what disintegration is.
Yeah, the disintegration. Yeah, it is a non-compositional factor. Yes.
So it's a happening. The reason I'm a little bit is because of the issue of vows and how we designate. I don't know if it's all vows, but some vows as forms.
Okay.
As a
yeah.
This
so
is
if vows are less become, you see, is that disintegration non-compositional? Is that what I'm thinking?
Well, you have vows that end when you die, and you have vows that continue, and yet we say that we don't call vows. You're calling it non-compositional factors. We classify them as forms, I think. Can we double check with Geshe?
Sure.
Or is it just some vows? Is it only and not all of them?
Right.
Yeah.
Morang the samlanalia, there's several methods. Morang this samlatan the ganzo namju domba rawar ke. Domba di kara sugre labrebe ke.
La.
Domba de sugrebe.
So
Lagora chad more di to the domba sugi like the domba sangma sugi like yore yan domba chedabaji sugi lagore domba de sugi labrwage. Kada shikwa di karsa su mare ko demi di chere labrwage. O di mora semnalia that sangma mejo tu de serwage. This session now the domba de sugi be gyunzen da rwage. Domba sangma sugrebe rwage. Su indan de che and shikwa di su mem da su mare labrwage.
Domba so is that number ringme so sa yes or that cause
Number karso begin.
number ringme so sa me thong de mare.
Hello, min kwan su lo.
Me thong me so number ringme so that domba so is a keling da shira ma be so is a
No.
Thank you as your young some that doesn't domba de shiva kon she keling boya.
Hello.
Who keling my
Jadi ke nanda di number riche mai be su la de su takwa ba cha ne su me ma cha de ma su yin la go.
那人家是那可是，谁是那
Su su long cha de.
同样的，这没被收销是吧？
Ine da su su long cha de.
但俺都干我啥的人，那么人家是每个同的在
La
还可是吧？
la.
今天同样没吧？大家收，大个我们收也没有的人，大个文化联系上是吧？
Ale.
变成俺这成都人没成都嘛呀，这不？哎，那哥们贵呀，那个小孩就今天就小伙是吧？
So da kuma magu ba di da domba de ro ge.
是啊，但这哥们个干个下去小是吧？
La ro. Adi lu ge le ge cha cha cha.
啊，绿了小是吧？
Ale lo.
是。
Ine da domba changma lo su le go.
那么上嘛不是收，但天有的其他嘛是收多的，什么嘛的我们让有是收多一嘛的，基本多一。
Yeah, is this giving on? So Geshe says, yes, all vows are regarded as form, but then there are different schools of thought, right? The Vaibhashikas, the Chaitamawa, and I think Prasangikas also believe the vows are form, but they call it invisible form, not kind of thing we can look at the pillar, there's a form, right? Visible form. It's invisible form. But then Sevatantika Madhyamikas and the Chitta Martins, they say, no, it's not a form, it's a cognition. Right, a part of a mind, in other words, right? So there are different schools of thought on that one. Yeah. For example, like the vow is, let's say, if I want to, like the what's called, the abandonment of stealing, isn't it? So that's associated with the body action karma. That's how they tied up with the form there, you know. And like not to lie, that is a speech action, you know. So that's how they say it's invisible form.
Invisible as in subtle, or invisible is different than subtle?
Or invisible.
Invisible versus the word subtle. Are they different things?
Tanda digi number regime su sidu kala ya su de tawa chilo koku gore ya kadu koku gore sa.
那么直接嘛是
都差不多
那个同样那个，
Ma de tawa
那
ke
直
ma
接是个到那都干过毛过噻，不个那个同样那么直接就是个吧，
la de.
这没有同样可以嘛，
Ine su tawa ke ma ro.
手差给这是没这可以嘛的，
Okay, so yeah. No, it's simply called invisible form, but they didn't say it's a subtle, right?
And do we say that because it shapes our mind and shapes our behavior? Is that why we're
It's called form.
looking at it as a form? Yeah, because it's creating a shape
Right.
of some form?
So the number regime ma be su la be di ene karso domba la tene nganju gi da chaje da kanga chi gyubar te go ro wa ge. Di chane number regime ma be su la be khal go sa ge.
那。
Number regime ma be
这啥的可这这倒是这些人，那么这些是在那快了，手头了带呢，这个就跑路不这个说不到这个是黑头啊，那么这些是我说，反正多可能是多嘛我这是多嘛我这样子，那么这些是有。
no. Ine da de domba de ge gyu la ye san 통구 yo ma da number regime ma be su ro wa ge.
그래.
Ine ko yin kwa da ka san di domba de la tene de nganju ge samro tang da da ke ja she da da kan gyubas tang yo ro wa ge. Ba di chane la gu yo ro so da ju zero.
다 그런 다그 희망 인생에 다 들지 ben 도망가서 잠저 가르 예서 가르서 직송도 그소 희망을 그 말에 애니사 희망 많이 막 딱봐 해달이야 뭐다그 속 나버리지 많이 속세야지 오케이 나 들으지.
Also, yeah, Geshe said, yeah, it does have effect, as you say, a way of thinking everything, but it's not called invisible form from that perspective, you know. But it is within us, right? Something we can see like the form of a pillar, or we say, well, that person has a red face, right? We can see, but we can't see that, right? The vows are within us. But it does, as you say, shape our way of thinking or speech or behaviors, yeah.
Shape.
Yeah. Or, right.
Like you tell lies, you confess others, you begin to think that are lying to you, and you don't believe the truth. That has no form. But it just said that this has a form. What has a form? Well, it has form.
Yeah. The vows are form, right? Not to steal, not to lie. It's related to our actions of speech and body, so it has a form.
And
It is a form, sorry. What?
Speech has a form.
Oh, what this what that again? What somebody tanda nga so nga yo ro wa gen.
yeah,
The nga di any su kan de cha re la ga sa de could di 죽음에 대해서는 가서 배나 나가 domba지어로 하게 나가 dom바지 수고를 하려고 와 이제 나가 수고를 하려고 말하게 어디게 야와 채구면 배나 나를 배나게 준방버기 다 dom바디 수고를 하게 이제
나 코로나 속다 나서는 계속 해야 돼. 그래도 속들이 오래.
라
자식으로.
안디 수고를 하려고 그래
자식으로.
찾아러 와 이제 디 숙소로 수고를 해야 돼
다 속자치로 시작해서 소
당아지 수고를 해야 되긴 다 숙소로 수고를 삼다 그러게
나
아주 니 멤버 양 수고 상바세는
또这些州的米线送下送菜的말이 시장送菜这个
수고를 힘들게
送菜是下菜这个要米线送下是送米线送下的也不看到小是吧
올라로 와
这那送菜的个炸的的吃的热的这些看看
사만
小了
알레 대연 나가 강가로 가서 대연 가자로 가서 남지 남배쇼나 술라버
是
아디 술라버 김제 가네 이 술거든
所以我永远就这个啥是这个知道吧
로
永远要不然永远
알레 중화게 수사는 no but is trying to make a distinction here right let's say when we look at the maybe I should say more of the objects of the five senses, right? In that context, okay, we can see the speech is not a form, right? Because form is attached to the what called the visual perception, right? You can see the shape, the color, all of that. So sound is auditory perception. Right? But in Buddhism, from another angle, right, they call all the five objects of the senses in some way as a form. And so that is more, I think, to do with what it is, because I think it's constituted by elements, right? That's what it is, right? Sound is constituted by elements. So from that point of view, it's a form. Similarly, and again, mind has no form. It is not form. Yeah.
Just to complete,
Yeah.
When we are declaring the vows, we're also designated an expiration. So in a way, in an expiration for it, we say from now until sun up comes, sometimes we take those 1-day vows. And sometimes we like monastic vows are until the day I die. And Bodhisattva vows are until the day I achieve enlightenment. So we're actually designating the disintegration of this vow.
Okay, so certain vows stop at death, and some
Well,
vows
we're
continue.
declaring it this way, yeah.
Right.
But it's not by nature that way. It's by declaration that way.
Yeah.
Can we double check?
Okay, oh sure. All right. Okay, then I can have one more if anyone's question. I'm looking at the time. Quran discord get that dagi manzo domba dige de su re la brawage. Kena di yangjoj kan di shuro chesa da dombe na la sabe na pena domba kha chi shi di domba tong du go rawage. Me ba cha du rawwa. Da domba kha chi da be chi si sang ma je ba de 전주 세배 domba de go rawage. 제대 강리야 니 나라저 다지 가서 예와 체다는 지 말고 뭐별 랑신게 토는 되네 말아와서 그러와게 근데 미다바이나 고 랑신기 기지기지 유로마들 산지 좀 되게 고 기지기 유로라 수저 말아와게 다이네 단도 도마카지 담메 담베 담바나 나나저게 게슬루고 도마디 치드디 땅도 그러와게 니 나나저 다 진짜 다샤저로 그래서 데레스타 도마카지 전주 선배 도마디 다 시내 거단 로디 걸어상이 어디 다가라 레드 여러봐서 다디 데셰시 용매로 세셰르지
대면으로 배제 다다 제로 먼저 도마차다 개소 도마사지서 룽아 도마도 지르와 룽아 도마도 코시르 메레로
알레요
저주 센세셈 유코라 껴 딩게로
알레요
그 유카가 도로
아니 게슬롱 넘바 게 셈다 데베드 게슬롱 넘바 여마르게
세운데베 개소 도마
방문에 숭셈으로 가게 다고 넘바 숭셈서 셈을 데데 저서 디엔 로드
다다 개소 도마사데 룽아 도마세고
알레요 Geshe says, yeah, I mean, that's right. For example, the monastic, the vows, right? When they take it, or even the durations until I die, right? That's how the Buddha's ordination happened. So, I mean, their vows are primarily related to the body and speech, right? So when we die, those two things don't continue anywhere, right? Whereas the Bodhisattva vows is much more related to the mind. So we said, until I become Buddha, right? So that's why it continues even after death, right? All right, you have a question here? Oh, one, repeat the question. Yeah, one, yeah, you're right. Oh, yeah, Rosama. Yeah.
You mentioned non-composite phenomena, no cause.
Which one?
Where you said non-composite phenomena has no cause.
No, I didn't say that.
Well, I wrote this down in my.
Oh, no, it has. Things are categorized into three types. One is form, one is mind or cognition, one is non-compositional factor. Right? All of these are things. Yeah. Oh, non-composite thing, yes, that's right. Right, non-composite thing, yes, has no cause, yes.
So has no cause.
Non-composite things.
So a disintegration is non-composite phenomenon. It has no cause?
No, according to Pasankhya.
You said disintegration has no.
No. According to Pasankhya, disintegration is a functional thing. It has been caused by something.
It isn't a cause itself.
It's not a cause of itself.
It's a result.
I have to check it.
A result.
Right, it is a result here.
Yeah.
Yeah. But when I use, right. Okay, let me clarify maybe this term, right? In the Tibetan word, we use like dumache, which has been translated as unproduced phenomenon. And sometimes we use the word non-composite phenomenon. We used to mean the same thing, right? If the unproduced makes sense to you, then a permanent phenomenon cannot have causes, right? You would accept that, right?
And
would you say the permanent things have no causes?
Can you give me an example of permanent phenomena first?
Right. Yeah, takpa ke chenshis naro nasa.
No.
Takpa che dumache ke shio ke chenshis naro nasa yuwa manu ke takpa che kyume ke.
Dumache changes in that nanga sajiro, nasa tori kasam jo sajiro.
Dida ngasa namdo takpa ke dira ba tunji rabo do shar de ko cha do orwa ke. I think we always say the space, right? But then I think maybe perhaps it's easier for us to think when we talk about this conceptual image of anything, right? So that's permanent.
So I thought space was dependent on objects. You couldn't define space without an object.
Or dependent object, you mean?
No, space itself is dependent on an object. You can't define space without a present object.
Okay. Yeah, we did that to do it. Question they call Namga second the ene chigla ten de yor wala okay. Taka ten bada tapani chipa marwa again. Napa the chigla madena ko teto yo marwas. Yeah, it is a dependent arising phenomenon, but that does not make it a permanent, you see. All phenomena are dependent arising, right?
You're talking about space now.
Yeah, space, yeah. Space is a phenomenon. It is a dependent arising phenomenon like pot, but then the space is, but dependent arising should not be translated as permanent, right? But it doesn't make it permanent.
What's this space dependent upon?
The Karela Tendi Yoresa again, Namka the Karela Tendi Yoresa.
Nanga days ne karase. Tori kasam selta nanga sigorta.
Togre
kasam
Tendi
sajiro.
Togre Kaval Tendi Yorwa.
But Toya da Ria minget tongba sigorta.
Right. Because it's defined as that which lacks obstruction of things, isn't it? So anything that obstructs, right, when we refute, is dependent on that. The space is defined in Buddhism as an absence of obstruction or lack of obstruction, obstructiveness.
There isn't any place like that, is there? Huh? Even the universe is, there's no place like that that doesn't have non-obstructions.
The question is, Tore Kasam is Zamuli Korana Yomarwas again. Tore Kasam second is Zamuli Korana, the next Kawas Zuzu Tenga Doris, Tore Kasam second Yomarwasa. Tore Kasam second is Zamuli Korana Yomar, Kawazu Goris, Tore Kasam. Tore
Kasam Nanga Dosi, Toya de Nagasu.
Under this is Lapshan Tigorva.
But I do.
For example, Geshe says here, in front of your space, right? You do this hand, nothing is obstructing your movement, right? That's called space. So space is defined as this, right? If you move your hand, nothing is here, right? Now let's say if it's a pillar, then here it obstructs, right? This is called space. The one you are moving here, this empty space, this is called space.
The air is obstructing.
Air is not obstructing, yeah. Air is intersecting, yes. And by the way, anyway, I think, because I think not, I want to open this up Pandora box. I think space is also intimately related with time. It's dependent on time, right? Space. So that's relativity. Right. Right. Emptiness is, yes, permanent. Yes. Emptiness is permanent.
Emptiness
is permanent. Yes. Yeah.
So what are you referring to as emptiness?
Well, it is the absence of the intrinsic existence of my iPhone, right? Right? That is the emptiness.
No, the word,
not the one you look at. That's not
a mental thing.
Huh?
It's just mental. It's not physical.
Yeah, it is. Yes, that's right. In one way, it's, it most seems like an abstract concept for us, isn't it? Abstract concepts are permanent, actually. Abstract concepts are permanent, right? Let me say this. My example, okay? If things go wrong, I'm responsible. When we say house, it's a concrete, right? We can know it's a construction. But when you say home, it's abstract, right? I can come to your house and feel at home. I have my house, I don't feel at home. So the home is more an abstract thing, isn't it? So like that, there's so many abstract phenomena. House is very concrete, So like that, emptiness is very abstract reality. So let's think about that. So we'll come back next week, okay?
Not the seat. The seat only by mental.
That's right. It is by the mental perception, right? You cannot react. That's it. Oh, you're welcome.
An announcement before the prayer request today. To honor Sagada, or the holy month of the Buddha's birth, enlightenment, and passing into paranirvana, as we do every year, we'll be having a Nyungnya retreat. And the Nyungnya retreat will start on May 30th, Saturday, May 30th, start at 5, and then last throughout Sunday, and then end on Monday, June 1st, at around 7:30 or around 8. This information is available on the event page of our website. Just wanted to remind everyone of the dates there. I do believe that I announced this previously, but just to remind everyone, because we are now in May, to please keep the dates of the Nyungnya in your calendar if you're interested in participating. Tumijamju shungil sele deba simba ki che resharba simba khazin sa dawala tranjani simba che de tungmen ta deni tsedan demba jina kenzen neba resha ni jina che de tungmen ta deni john ching khazin shu dewa khoran re de kenzen neba re khoran yang ani jina dan john yi gi chedo ani nijisinda yuan che de tungmen na nas. Prayer requests for those who have recently passed include prayers for Simba, a German Shepherd who passed away last Monday. So please keep Simba in your prayers and dedications, along with Simba and all of those who have recently passed. May they be free from all suffering and purified of all negative karma accumulated since beginningless times. May they be reborn with all precious freedoms and endowments. May they meet the Dharma and a qualified guru and quickly achieve liberation and enlightenment. Prayers for those who are still with us are requested for Gina, who is suffering from cancer, and John Ching, who is also suffering from cancer. Continued prayers for both of them. So along with Gina and John, may all sentient beings be free from all obstacles, hardship, and negative karma. May their wishes and prayers be fulfilled. May they be guided by the blessings of the three jewels, and may they experience everlasting peace and happiness.
Thank you, Geshe. So I'm looking at the Tibetan calendar. Maybe you might find this helpful. May 17th, Sunday, then starts the Sakadawa, Vesak month, according to Tibetan calendar, right? So when you do the Nyungnya, that's a full moon. So I just want to confirm that as a translator. And so we will, first do the Avalokiteshvara salutation, recitation, dedication for the deceased, and then we'll do the healing Buddha for the living. Chadong Golun Yuben, Yebo Dong, Jendong, Geba Sangbe, Sangye Dong, Kangla Kangdu, Tela, Jumba Jende Sela, Changze de Omani Preme Hong. Omonim beme hon ren gyawa di nyodo da jere sewa rubju lowa jegya malu ba deye sala geba sho toje gun la nyombe jomden de chanzan tebe ngendu dongye sen dozo ne se sanje bindu yaye chanze lo om namo bhagavate bhagaze guru bindu ya tabaranza ya tadagada ya arahate samye sambuddha ya teyata om bhagaze bhagaze ma bhagaze bhagaze ranza samukade so teyata om bhagaze bhagaze ma bhagaze Om bhagaze bhagaze ma bhagaze bhagaze ranza samukade so wa gyawa di nyodo da membe yevu dojo ne dowa chikya Teye salam geba sho. Lode jaze yudong dega de gezam pongwe jido minba xin denba zinla wangdo gichu. Tangnian chugun jo la so wan de ma wan dame kunjen dongwa de kangre jongso ninda seze. Zhanggun yawa nyeba yapse je dangsong tenzi ma we shiba. Tenzin shiwe yingo zebe je xie nikun changzhu dendu. Longdo tamzhe bebe beyun je deja yazu guando shabden. Tezang guanda cheze sobe ze yongzo yure tubu nyage shi longri deyin nebu. Duden gangren dabo shabden shon dona kongmen zeba namda gun dendan dobe penden chube. Dendo yume chebe tenle je gesang duje dendo shabden. Jizi longmen tuje me lambda gesang duje dendang zangmen. Chodong zodo jido zomba yi jida menbe lungu lundu shu. Raja Shingi Gongbo Seba Men Zodo Namje Genyong Doma Shu Chozo Zeye Lazo Tamze Tade Mishi Choge Ngozo Zu Dubden Chidang Losan Yawa Shiru Denban Zenbe Beyen Je Tade Deja Yongge Xinyen Cho Yangzhe Ninje Hongbo Jiden Sumgwe Chana Bemen Don Denbe Zawa Soso Tawa Yi Namda Sudin Yangda Langbo 洛桑夜店北斗小店说，最终家境农村养百姓，上中南去上中中，公中是老中中这边的，这边我到全部小店，前边东岸国王不少的，这边琳琅细雨不着急，这边点点那些。比如新年全部小店说，这边朗读呼吸最大的，这边卡卡念做让是。上北地界这个一线路，说不定新年全部小店车上路了，准备点军民众大局上面时间吧，老天这点点的，这点新年全部小店，就算要我世界去哪的，昨天他们这上面说呢，大家马上特别点。接到门边登个轮着手，常住生着人不切马街把那解决，也把娘把妹把，往年广东陪把手，当年大话人不切马街把那解决这，也把娘把。往年广东陪把手，陕西北京就是没到站了，为啥00年代见吧？上街行动没得办法，如果难道行了就把说抗日绕外国外新干说平常在我马路中外，现在是往天津家族下边7点8度天就节一档过路了那么的。你养大呀面叫我更多养大拉玛的对面确实别了龙居萨达南界原来拉着能多些强给过把牛多说